I never thought a single glass of wine could reveal everything wrong with a family. It happened on a Friday night, the kind of night I used to dream of. Music humming softly, laughter echoing in the dining room, my son, his wife, and their business. Partners gathered around a table I'd built with my own hands. Everything looked perfect until it wasn't. She leaned back in her chair, swirling her glass like it held the world's secrets, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Maybe if your father-in-law had worked a little harder, you wouldn't have to depend on old men's sympathy." Everyone laughed, and then, still smiling, she turned. "Oh, sorry, Walter, no offense." Then she poured what was left of her red wine over my sleeve, just like that, like it was a joke. Short pause in tone, softer voice. "If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. And if stories like this touch your heart, please subscribe. Because sometimes the quietest stories carry the loudest lessons." The red wine spread slowly down my arm, staining my white shirt. No one said a word. My son, Adam, just stared into his plate. And that silence, that was worse than the wine. I smiled. That's what men my age do when life tries to humiliate them. We smile, so no one sees how deep it cuts. But I'll tell you something I didn't say out loud that night. That woman, my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, she had no idea who she was talking to. She had no idea that the old man she mocked owned the very company she'd been chasing for a year. The same company that was about to sign her $800 million contract. It's funny, isn't it? How people can be blinded by arrogance and still think they see the world clearly. Let me tell you how it all began. I spent 40 years working my bones to dust at Harper Engineering, a small manufacturing firm that started in a warehouse on the edge of Chicago. Back then, we built engine parts for farming equipment, nothing fancy. But the founder, my old friend Sam Harper, believed in me when no one else did. When the company started struggling, Sam offered me 5% of ownership. He said, "If we sink together. But if we rise, you'll have your hand on the wheel." I never sold that 5%, and over the next 4 decades, Harper Engineering became something else entirely, merged, rebranded, evolved into a multinational holding company called Harper Systems, now worth billions. I never told anyone about my shares, not my son, not my wife before she passed, not even my lawyer until years later. People think secrecy is about pride, but sometimes it's about peace. Vanessa met my son 10 years ago at a networking event. She was beautiful, sharp, ambitious, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make everyone straighten their tie. But behind the smiles there was always something cold, a kind of hunger that never quite went away. She worked in corporate acquisitions, the kind of job where deals are everything and empathy is nothing. When she found out Adam was between jobs, she didn't leave him. She rebranded him, got him a position in her firm, dressed him like a trophy, and turned every family dinner into a board meeting. And she made sure I knew my place. "Walter," she said once, "maybe you should let the professionals handle things. Retirement is a blessing. You've earned rest." I smiled and said, "Darling, some men rest when they're dead. I'm not one of them." She laughed, but I could tell she didn't like that answer. Pause. Soft re-hook. Have you ever watched someone smile at you, but you can tell they're secretly trying to erase you? That's what it felt like every time she called me Dad. The night of the dinner, they were celebrating a major contract Vanessa's firm was about to secure. She'd been talking about it for months, some massive partnership that would change their company forever. She even invited me, saying, "We want you to feel part of the success." But really, I was there to be the old man in the corner, proof that she'd made it further than I ever did. The restaurant was too fancy for my taste. Crystal chandeliers, people pretending to enjoy food they couldn't pronounce. And yet I sat there, quietly, watching her toast to a deal she didn't know was mine. When she poured that wine on me, I didn't react. Not because I wasn't angry, but because I was ready. See, earlier that day, my lawyer had called. He said, "Walter, Harper Systems is finalizing that merger. You'll need to approve the final signature." By Monday, I asked him to send me the contract, and when I read the name of the company Harper Systems was acquiring, my heart stopped. It was her firm, Vanessa's. That night, while everyone laughed around me, I sat there thinking, God has a sense of humor. And sometimes he lets you see it in real time. I didn't say a word. I just excused myself, drove home, and sat at my kitchen table looking at that stained sleeve. I thought about all the times she'd mocked me. All the times she told Adam to focus on people who mattered. And I smiled. Because for the first time, I realized I was about to teach her what real power looked like. Not revenge, not cruelty, just the truth. The next morning, I called my lawyer. "Finalize the acquisition," I said, "but don't announce it publicly yet." "Understood," he said. "You want to keep it quiet?" "For now," I told him. "Let's see what truth sounds like when people think you have nothing." For 2 days, I said nothing. Then on Monday, I called Adam. "Son, how's work?" He sighed. "Rough. Vanessa's been stressed. The merger's been delayed, some board-level issue. The CEO of the acquiring company is reviewing all terms himself." "Is that so?" I said. "Well, tell her not to worry. I've got a feeling the new owner's a fair man." He chuckled, not knowing what that meant. Soft re-hook. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, you'll understand how heavy silence can feel. It's not revenge that fills you. It's the peace of finally being seen, even if they don't know it yet. That week, the official press release went out. Harper Systems acquires Vantage Global for $800 million, her company, her contract, her dream deal, and under the signatories section at the bottom of the page was my name, Walter Green, senior partner and shareholder, Harper Systems. It hit her like thunder. That night, my phone rang. It was Adam. "Dad," he said, breathless, "Vanessa's losing her mind. She just found out Harper Systems owns her firm now, and that you signed the deal." I said, "Well, son, small world, huh?" He didn't laugh. He just whispered, "She wants to come over." I said, "She's welcome any time, but tell her to bring a towel. I still haven't forgotten about the wine." The doorbell rang just after 9 that night. I knew it was her before I even looked. There's a kind of silence that follows a guilty person. Not calm, not peaceful, just hollow. That's what filled my hallway. When I opened the door, Vanessa stood there in a sleek black coat, eyes red, makeup smudged but pride still holding her upright. "Walter," she started, voice shaking between fury and disbelief. "I need to understand something." I nodded slowly. "Then come in. It's cold out there." She stepped inside, glancing around my living room like it was her first time seeing it. The worn-out couch, the old clock ticking too loudly, the framed photos of my late wife, Ellen, smiling from the mantel. I offered her a seat. She didn't take it. Instead, she stood in the middle of the room, trembling. "Is it true?" "What's that?" I asked. She threw a folded paper on the table. The press release. My name circled in red. This! Did you actually sign off on my company's acquisition, Harper Systems? Is that you? I looked at her for a long time before answering. I suppose you didn't read the fine print when you poured wine on me. Her face drained of colour. You can't be serious. How? You're retired. You barely... She stopped herself. Barely what? I asked quietly. She stammered. You barely leave this house. I smiled faintly. I didn't build my life leaving houses. I built it keeping promises. That's when she sat down. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small, not powerless, just human. She rubbed her temples. This is going to destroy everything. The merger, my role. They'll think there's a conflict of interest. There is a conflict of interest, I said. You treated your own family like an inconvenience while chasing a deal that already belonged to them. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't want me to see. I didn't mean to, she began. Yes, I said softly. You did. You meant every word. You meant every look. You meant to make me feel like a burden. She looked down. The air between us was thick, not with anger, but history. All those dinners, all those cold remarks, the way she used to sigh when I told old stories, the way she called my truck quaint, like it was a relic that embarrassed her. I never hated her for it. I just pitied how small her world must have been. She whispered, Why didn't you tell anyone? Why keep it a secret? Because, I said, money doesn't change who you are. It just shows who you've been all along. She swallowed hard. Then what happens now? I stood, walked to the mantel, and picked up a framed photo of Ellen. She was holding our newborn son, Adam, wrapped in a yellow blanket. Now, I said, you learn what humility feels like. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she stood too, her tone softening. Walter, I never meant to hurt Adam. Or you, I sighed. You didn't hurt me, Vanessa. You embarrassed yourself. There's a difference. She turned toward the door, shoulders shaking, pride still trying to hold her up. Before she left, she said, They'll probably remove me from the board. I nodded. Maybe, but consider it a favor. Sometimes being removed from the wrong table saves you a seat at the right one. She froze for a moment, then walked out. The door closed gently. Not a slam, just a quiet click, like a chapter ending. Pause, rehook. If you've ever had someone disrespect you, thinking your silence meant weakness, remember, silence often means you're just waiting for the right moment to speak. If you're still watching, hit subscribe. There's more truth where this came from. After she left, I sat in my recliner for a long time, staring at the empty glass she'd refused to touch. I thought about Ellen. She'd have said, Don't gloat, Walter. People who drown in pride don't need pushing. They need lifelines. That's why I didn't celebrate. Instead, I called Adam. Son, I said. Vanessa came by. He hesitated. How did it go? She's upset. But she'll be fine. He exhaled. Dad, I don't even know what to say. You own the company she's been chasing all this time. Why didn't you tell me? Because Adam, I said, if I had told you, you would have told her. And she would have used it, not cherished it. He was quiet. I added, Son, sometimes the hardest thing a father can do is watch his children learn what respect really costs. There was a long pause. Then he said quietly, You're right, Dad. She needed to see this. Maybe I did too. The next day, my lawyer called. "Walter, you're officially the controlling shareholder after the merger. What do you want to do about Vantage's leadership?" "The board's asking." I leaned back in my chair. "Keep Vanessa on probation," I said, "but make her report directly to the new interim chair." "And who's that?" he asked. "Appoint Adam," I said. He chuckled. "That'll make headlines." "Let it," I said. Some stories deserve to be heard. That night I didn't sleep much. I walked through the house, touching the walls Ellen and I had painted together, remembering the years we had nothing. Not even furniture we didn't build ourselves. And now, $800 million deals, corporate power, people calling me Sir Dot, none of it meant more than the quiet memory of a woman who once said, "You don't need the world to see your worth, Walter. Just live it." She was right. She always was. 2 days later, Adam stopped by. He stood in the doorway holding a box of donuts like peace offerings. "Coffee?" I asked. He smiled. "Only if you make it? Yours still tastes like oil and nostalgia." Sat, laughed a little, and then he said, "Dad, she's trying. Vanessa, I mean. She apologized to me, and she asked me to thank you for not firing her." I shrugged. Firing her would have been easy. Teaching her something is harder. He nodded. "She wants to talk again, properly this time." Pause. Rehook. If you've ever had someone apologize after years of pride, you know, it's not about the words, it's about whether they finally mean them. Vanessa came by later that week. No coat, no makeup, no armor. She sat on the same couch as before, but this time her voice was steady. "I wanted to say I'm sorry, not just for that night, but for how I've treated you all these years." I nodded. "Thank you," she hesitated. "I thought success made people important." "I was wrong," I smiled. "It's all right. You learned. That's more than most people ever do." She looked around the house again, eyes landing on a photo of Ellen. "She must have been proud of you." "She was," I said softly. "And I'm still trying to deserve that." We talked for almost an hour, not about money or deals or board meetings, about family, about mistakes, about second chances. Before she left, she asked, "If you were in my place, would you have forgiven me?" I thought about it, then said, "No, I'd have done worse. But I've had 70 years to realize forgiveness weighs less than anger." She smiled weakly. "I guess I needed you to teach me that." As she walked to the door, she paused. "Walter." "Yes?" "Thank you for not being the man I thought you were." I nodded. "And thank you for finally seeing the man I always was." That night, I sat outside under the porch light, listening to crickets. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy. I realized something important. Sometimes the biggest revenge isn't winning. It's watching someone finally understand what they lost when they didn't respect you. When you've lived long enough, you learn that truth doesn't travel quietly. It leaks. It echoes. And sometimes it ends up on the morning news. The first headline hit 3 days after that dinner. Harper Systems acquires Vantage Global in $800 million deal signed by unknown shareholder Walter Green. Unknown. That word made me smile. By lunchtime, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Old co-workers, reporters, people I hadn't heard from in 30 years suddenly remembered my number. One of them even said, "Walter, you sly dog, were you hiding in plain sight?" I said, "No, just minding my business, but the world doesn't. Like quiet men. It wants spectacle." By the next day, there were cameras outside my driveway. A few reporters even waited by the hardware store downtown, hoping I'd stop for coffee like I used to. One woman asked, "Mr. Green, is it true you're now worth over 200 million personally?" I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Ma'am, I've been rich since the day my wife said I do. Money's just paperwork." She didn't know what to do with that, so she smiled awkwardly and left. That's the difference between
Generations. We didn't measure worth in decimals that evening. Adam came by again. He was laughing before he even closed the door. Dad, do you have any idea how crazy this is? People at Vanessa's office are calling you a legend. They even
said your story should be a Netflix show. I chuckled. Tell them I'd rather watch the weather. He sat down, shaking his head. She's handling it better than I expected. Embarrassed, but quiet. And she asked me to tell you thank you for not giving interviews. I don't
need applause, I said. I've seen what applause does to people. They start clapping for themselves.
Pause. Gentle re-hook. If you're still watching, tell me, have you ever been praised for something you never bragged about? That kind of peace is different. It's quiet. It's real. And if you feel that, subscribe. So stories like this don't disappear. A week later, I received a call from Harper Systems board. They wanted me to attend the upcoming shareholders meeting. "Mr. Green," the chairman said, "your name carries weight now. People want to hear from the man behind the merger." I told him, "I'm not behind anything, I just held on longer than most." But I went anyway. The meeting was held downtown in a glass building that looked more like an art museum than an
office. Everyone wore suits that probably cost more than my first car. When I walked in wearing my old brown jacket and polished boots, a few people stared like I'd wandered in from another world. I shook hands, nodded politely, and waited for
them to finish their introductions. Then the chairman said, "Mr. Green, would you like to say a few words?" I stood, cleared my throat, and said, "I'm not a businessman. I'm a man who built things with his hands, engines, machines. Trust. If you want Harper Systems to last another 40 years, remember, profit builds walls, integrity builds
homes." The room went silent. Then slowly they clapped. That night, back at home,
I poured myself a cup of black coffee, the same brand I've drunk for 50 years, and looked through old photo albums. There was one picture of me and Sam Harper, grease up to our elbows, standing beside the first machine we'd ever sold. We didn't know it then, but that little engine would feed thousands of families. I smiled, closed the album, and whispered, "You did good, Sam." 2 days later, the story took another turn. A business magazine published an article titled "The Hidden Owner: How Walter Green's Integrity Saved an $800 million Deal." They wrote about my silence, about how I'd chosen not to interfere, about how I'd quietly let the younger generation learn their lessons. They even quoted one anonymous source who said, "Mr. Green's restraint is proof that wisdom is louder than ego." I didn't recognize myself in those words, but I hoped
maybe Adam would. That weekend, the twins came over. 9 years old, full of questions. "Grandpa," Ethan said, "Mum said you're super rich now. Does that mean we can have a pool?" I laughed so hard I almost spilled my coffee. "Buddy, you've already got one. It's called imagination."
"Doesn't even need cleaning." His sister, Emma, frowned. "But is it true, Grandpa? Are you really rich?" I looked at her and said, "Yes, sweetheart, but not the way people think." She blinked. "Then what do you mean?" I pointed to both of them. "I mean you two are my riches," she giggled. "Then we better not get lost." "Don't worry," I said. "I've got the map." Pause. Gentle re-hook. If you've got grandkids, you know, that's the only wealth worth counting. If you're still listening, hit subscribe so you and I can keep sharing these quiet truths. A few days later, Vanessa sent me an email. Not a long one, not poetic, Just this. I apologized in person, but I don't think you know how much
Mean it. Thank you for the lesson I didn't deserve but needed. Vanessa, I replied, you learned fast. Use it slow, that was all.
Sometimes brevity carries more forgiveness than paragraphs. The next morning, I went down to the shop, the same auto garage I'd kept even after retirement. There's something grounding about the smell of oil, metal, and dust. Like proof you still matter somewhere small. While I was sweeping the floor, a fancy car pulled up, a white Mercedes. Out stepped a woman in a sharp blue suit, Vanessa. For a moment I thought she'd come to argue. Instead, she handed me a brown envelope. "What's this?" I asked. She smiled softly. "A letter from the board. They want you to join as an honorary advisor, and I made sure they added a scholarship fund in your wife's name." I opened the letter and saw it there. "The Ellen Green Foundation, supporting women in engineering." I looked up at her. "That's beautiful, Vanessa." She nodded. I figured it was time to build something that lasts. For the first time, I believed her. That evening, I sat on the porch again, sunset pouring gold across the yard. I could hear Ethan and Emma laughing in the backyard, Adam grilling burgers, Vanessa helping set the table. And I thought about how strange life is, how the same woman who once poured wine on me was now pouring lemonade for my grandkids. Maybe that's what forgiveness really looks like. Not forgetting the stain, but watching someone clean it with their own hands. Before we ate, I raised my glass of iced tea. "Here's to lessons that cost a lot," I said, "and families that learn to pay together." Everyone laughed, even Vanessa. And for the first time in years, the house felt full again. Not because of money, but because of peace. The week after the backyard cookout, I woke before sunrise the way old men do, by habit more than alarm. I brewed coffee that could wake a mule and stepped out onto the porch. The air was cool, the kind that makes a man grateful for a sweater, and for the time he's been given. Across the yard, the old maple lifted its arms against the pale sky. I thought about seasons, how they don't ask permission to change, they just do. Families are like that too. My phone buzzed on the porch. Rail. A message from Adam. "Board meets today at 2. Want me to swing by afterwards?" I replied. "Door's open. It always is." I sat there a while, listening to a world waking up, thinking about the odd road that led us here, a spilled glass of wine, a signature I'd kept quiet, a deal that could have made enemies, but somehow made room for grace instead. People say, wealth changes everything. Truth is, it mostly changes people who don't know what they already have. I finished my coffee and went inside. On the hallway wall, there's a line of frames from every decade. Our wedding photo, the babies with cheeks like apples, the blurry Polaroid of our first beat-up car, the day we took the "for sale" sign out of this front yard and put our white backs into living. In the last frame, Ellen's holding a pie she burned and pretended was caramelized. The crust looks like a tire. I can still hear her laughing about it. If money could buy that sound back, the whole world would be cheap. By noon, I was at the shop, sweeping what didn't need sweeping. A man can think better with a broom in his hands. The bell over the door chimed. Vanessa stepped in, not in a power suit, just a navy blouse and flats, hair pulled back, face open. "Board asked me to bring you this," she said, holding out a folder. "Adam's chairing the restructuring committee. He handled himself well." "I believe it," I said. Kid's finally grown into his voice. She smiled, a real one this time. "You were right about probation." I thought it was punishment. It was actually a chance to pay attention. "You did," I said. "That counts." She glanced around the shop, walls full of calendars, parts catalogues, and old thank you notes that used to arrive with cookies. "You ever going to retire?" "For real?" she asked. "I retire every night. Start over in the morning." She shook her head, amused. "You know, some people would have cashed out, bought a condo on a beach and disappeared." "Some people never had this," I said, tapping. The counter scarred by time and stories. She opened the folder on the workbench. Inside were draft documents for the Foundation scholarship, plus a letterhead mock-up, Ellen Green Foundation. Beneath it, a simple line, "For women who build things." "It's good," I said softly. "It sounds like her." "I thought so too," she said. "There's something else." She slid a small envelope across the bench. "It's not from me." I recognized the tidy handwriting right away. Our lawyers. Inside was a short note and a copy of a recorded deed. The shop property, legally transferred to a trust with Adam and the twins as co-beneficiaries. I looked up. Vanessa lifted her
Hands. That was Adam's idea. He said if the sign says Green and Sons, it ought to mean Green and grandkids someday. I chuckled. I always liked that kid when he wasn't looking. Her eyes softened. Thank you for not embarrassing me when you could have.
I think the world taught me to win loudly. You taught me there's another way. Winning quietly is cheaper, I said. Doesn't cost your soul. She nodded and left the folder with me. When she reached the door, she paused. "I'm going to try to be the kind of person Ellen would have invited to stay for pie, even the burnt kind." "Show up with ice cream," I said. "You'll be welcome." After she left, I stood alone a while, hand on the folder, feeling the weight of what we keep and what we finally set down. In the afternoon, Adam came by. He looked like me at 35, hopeful, but pretending not to be. He laid his phone on the counter. A photo glowed on the screen. Him at the board table, sleeves rolled up, a circle of faces listening. "How'd it go?" I asked. He exhaled. "Better than I feared, harder than I hoped. We're rebuilding culture, not just numbers. I think we can do it." "You can," I said. "Culture starts when the loudest person stops needing to be." He grinned. "You always talk like that. Your mother used to call it front porch philosophy. Worked on splinters too." He grew quiet, then asked what he really came to ask. "Dad, do you forgive her? Vanessa?" "I forgave her the night she knocked on my door," I said. "Forgiveness isn't a reward, it's a release. Helps the forgiver breathe." He looked relieved, then embarrassed by the relief. "I'm sorry I didn't defend you sooner," he said. "I told myself staying out of it kept the peace. Really, I was protecting the wrong kind of calm." I reached across the counter and squeezed his shoulder. "Son, you defended me today, maybe not with speeches, but by the kind of man you're deciding to be. That's the kind of defense a father cares about." He nodded, eyes shining the way mine do when wind gets in them indoors. We didn't name the feeling. Men of my size and vintage mostly pat backs and pour coffee. That evening, we all gathered at my place. Nothing fancy, spaghetti, jarred sauce that always tastes better when the grandkids stir it like they're saving the world. Ethan insisted the salad needed more croutons. Emma built a tower of them and called it nutrition. We ate around the old table that survived 15 moves, 3 repairs, and 1,000 overheard secrets. After dinner, the twins set up a stage by stacking 2 footstools and sang a song about Grandpa the Boss Man that had maybe 3 notes and 1 destiny. I clapped like they were at Carnegie Hall. If you don't clap for your own, the world claps them off stage. Later, when the kids were drawing, Adam and Vanessa stood by the sink, washing dishes in the easy silence of people doing something useful. together. The house felt like it used to. No performance, no planning, just the kind of ordinary that riches can't buy because riches keep changing their price. When they left, I walked the plates back to the kitchen and noticed the wine stain
on the cuff of that white shirt I'd never bothered to throw away.
I held the fabric to the light. Funny thing, after a good scrubbing, the stain was only a faint shadow now. You'd miss it if you weren't looking. Some hurts end up like that. Not gone, not ruling you. Just part of the weave. The next morning, the foundation board met in a small conference room that smelled like coffee and fresh carpet. Vanessa had drafted the program. An engineer from Harper Systems volunteered to run selection. A retired professor agreed to mentor recipients. We set one rule that felt like a prayer. Applicants must have built anything that improved someone else's day, a bookshelf, a bike repair, a better way to route Grandma's meds. We weren't awarding test scores. We were funding hands that helped. After the meeting, I visited the cemetery. I don't go often. I carry Ellen with me more than I go to where she isn't, but that day felt right. I brought a single yellow flower, the same sunny color she wore when she swore the burnt pie was creative cuisine. I told her what we'd done with her name, told her about Adam's new steadiness, about Vanessa's apology, about Ethan's crouton architecture, about Emma's notebook where she'd written engineer and then erased it and wrote it again darker. I told her the shop was safe in a trust and that the sign would mean something for another generation. And I told her about the wine, how it stained and then faded. How we didn't make enemies when life offered us the easy choice. How we picked something else. She would have liked that part. She never wanted me to win loudly. She wanted us to be all right. On my way back, I drove the long route down Harper Road, past the old warehouse where a different version of me hauled parts and dreamed of nothing grander than a steady paycheck and a good pair of boots. Sometimes we think our lives are small because the world measures big. But a small life done faithfully is a barn that never blows down. By afternoon, I was back at the shop when a young woman stepped in, nervous, chin up, a stack of forms tucked against a thrifted blazer. "Sir, I'm here about the scholarship. It says I can bring what I built." She held up a small wooden box, dovetail joints on the corners, a smooth lid that sat like a promise. "My grandfather's war medals go inside. I made it so Grandma doesn't have to keep them in a shoebox anymore." I felt something in my chest loosen like a tight screw finally turning. "Looks like you just built a future," I said. "We'll help you keep going." She smiled the way people do when someone finally believes them. When she left, I placed her application on the top of the stack and wrote one word across it: yes. In the early evening, the landline rang. A reporter from a national outlet. They wanted the real story behind the quiet billionaire. I declined as kindly as I could. "Ma'am, I'm a mechanic with a lucky signature. The real story is the folks who keep showing up. You should talk to the scholarship winners." She promised to follow up. I hope she does. The camera needs better subject. That night, Adam texted another photo. Him and Vanessa outside a small diner we hadn't visited in years, holding 2 ice cream cones like a truce. Under it he wrote, "Starting small, feels big." I stared at the picture longer than a man stares at a phone, then put it face down and thanked the kind of grace that doesn't ask for credit. Before bed, I pulled the white shirt from the closet, the one with the fading stain. I ironed it, not to wear soon, but to save. Men my age keep tokens. We don't hoard trophies, we keep reminders. This one says, when you could embarrass, restore instead. When you could shout, speak plain. When you could take, build. I hung it beside my old brown jacket, a uniform of sorts. On the kitchen table, I opened a clean notebook and wrote 3 lines for the twins to find someday. Power is quiet when it's real. Money can buy a seat. Character builds the table. If someone spills on you, don't spill back. Bring a towel. I tore the page carefully and slipped it behind the framed photo of the shop's grand opening. Me and Sam, grease up to our elbows, both of us grinning like fools who didn't know we were starting something that would outlast us. The house settled the way old houses do, soft creaks like familiar names spoken in the next room. I turned off the last light and stood a moment in the doorway, listening to a kind of quiet that isn't empty anymore. It's full. It holds a table set for more than one, a porch that welcomes, a shop that will keep humming when my hands are too shaky for wrenches. In the end, we don't keep much. We keep what we choose: faith, a family, learning to apologize, a name that means we came through this together. We keep a stain that reminds us not to be bitter, a scholarship that turns someone else's first into 100 next. We keep a story that could have been about revenge and instead decided to be about repair. People will keep talking about the number in that headline, I suppose. 800 million looks good in ink, but the better line is quieter. A grandfather refused to shame the woman who shamed him, and a family learned how to stay. That's wealth enough for me.